Academic warning. Students are initially placed on academic warning after completing a term with a GPA of 2.0 or below. When this occurs, the student is notified via email and directed to their Atlas account to view the academic warning presentation and complete a 5-item certification statement. Once they have completed these steps, the student is free to register, although they are encouraged to follow up with an academic advisor to ensure that they are on the right track. At the end of the student's first term on academic warning, if their cumulative GPA is above a 2.0, the student will be placed back in good standing and will not need any further intervention. If, however, the student ends the term with a GPA of less than a 2.0, they will be placed on academic probation or P1 status. The student will receive an email through their Atlas account and will be instructed on the next steps to take. Probation 1. When a student is placed on academic probation or P1, a registration hold is placed on their account. The student is directed to visit the Educational Success website. Once the student accesses this site, they are then directed to complete a probation pass and an educational audit through dynamic forms. Once this has been completed and electronically submitted, the student is required to meet with an academic advisor in order to review the probation pass and educational audit and to discuss the necessary steps the student must take in order to return to good standing. As part of this process, the student's course load may be restricted by the academic advisor, as the advisor will have to clear the student to register and record a summary of their discussion in Space Mountain for future reference. If at the end of the term the student has earned a GPA below 2.0 and they had already registered, they may have to adjust their schedule as the credit hours may be adjusted down by the academic advisor. Probation 2. Students placed in academic probation P1 who earn a term GPA below a 2.0 are placed on academic probation or P2. The student will receive an email instructing them to visit the Education Success website. Here, the student must complete an academic probation pass and an educational audit. After completing these forms and submitting them online through dynamic forms, the student is then instructed to meet with an academic advisor. The student and advisor will review the student's academic performance and discuss the necessary steps the student must take in order to return to good standing. The advisor will clear the student to register for a restricted number of credit hours and make a note summarizing their conversation in Space Mountain. Once again, the student's academic standing will be calculated at the end of the term. Students who earn a term GPA of 2.0 but have a cumulative GPA below a 2.0 will remain on P2. Students whose term and cumulative GPA increase to 2.0 or above will be placed in good standing. If the student's term GPA falls below 2.0, they will be reassigned to suspension status. The student will be notified through Atlas of their suspension and given instructions on the readmission process. If the student was already registered for courses for the following term, they will be dropped. Academic suspension. The student will not be permitted to register for the upcoming semester, and transient coursework will not be approved. Students on academic suspension must sit out at least one term. During this term, students are encouraged to complete the readmission process. As part of the readmission process, the student must submit a readmission application. This will be reviewed, and if deemed acceptable, the student will be enrolled in a suspension Blackboard course. Before registering, the student must complete an orientation and quiz in Blackboard and fill out a suspension questionnaire and sign a suspension contract. All of this will be done through the Blackboard course. Once they have met the readmission requirements, the student will be allowed to register for a maximum of 7 credit hours, which must be on-site and full term. The student will also be required to meet with an assigned advisor several times during the term and complete a SP2 orientation assignment. As long as the student completes all the requirements by the posted deadline and earns a GPA of 2.0 or above during their first term back, the student will be placed on SP2 status and allowed to register for the following term. If the student does not meet the terms of the contract, they will be required to sit out an additional term before being allowed to return under the terms of the original contract. If the student fails to earn a term GPA of 2.0 or above, they will be suspended again. Here we see a visual representation of a student's progression from academic warning to suspension, along with the interventions required at each level. Note that as the student moves through the program, the interventions intensify and more is required of the student. What can I do to help? As an academic advisor helping a student in academic distress, here are some things you should keep in mind. Be sure to always read the Space Mountain notes, as some students may have already met with an advisor previously, especially returning P1, P2, SP2, and suspension students. Be conservative when clearing students to register for the next term. A good rule of thumb is to clear students for the same number of credits that they passed the previous term. Confer with other colleagues if you have questions about how many credits to allow the student to take, as this can provide a different perspective on the situation. Be very specific in your Space Mountain notes, as this will help you in the future if the student has to follow up with you, and will also be helpful to the next advisor who sees the student. Help the student keep in mind their long-term goals. Remind them that what is important is that they are successful each term and not how long they will take to get back to good standing. Most importantly, don't do more for the student than they are willing to do for themselves. Make sure that the student is invested in the process and is fully completing each and every step. For example, if they incorrectly fill out the educational audit or probation pass, have them fill it out again, as this will tell you a great deal about the student's motivation and interest in taking the necessary actions to be successful and return to good academic standing.